Hi there, this is Matt, and I was going to cover a topic on the Prep Guide, levels of analysis. Many of you indicated in the poll, thank you very much for completing that there were some questions about levels of analysis, and in particular, maybe coming up with your own example that might be relevant to introductory psychology. So I figured I'd give you an example or two because I think that's the best way to learn or to teach about levels of analysis. So we know about levels of analysis in biology. For example, there are biologists that study grassland prairies. There are biologists that study the grass. There are biologists that study the form of grass, or the stalks and the mechanisms and the structure of grass. There are people that study the grassland ecologists and biologists that study just the seed head. Where does the seed head come from? There are many people that study just the seed. How does it grow? How does it propagate? What is the mechanism there involved? And then there are people that study specific aspects of the the seed. That is, things like the endosperm and the shell coat and so on and so forth. But what you can see is that what we have are different levels of sort of the same phenomena, or the same sort of interest or thing there. These are different levels of analysis in biology related to grass and seeds and so on and so forth. There may be other levels involved in here. We might look at a genetic level. We might look at a molecular level. We could even look at ecosystem levels, so higher levels. In psychology, we might ask a question about misbehavior in the classroom. So if we were given a scenario that Miss Johnson is having trouble managing behavior in her classroom, we might think about what level of study or analysis might we be interested in. We might start. Some people might be interested in the level of the school, and that is, you could study the dynamics of the school or the school district. You could ask questions like, what are the demographics of the school? What is the funding rate of the school? How many kids come from poor backgrounds? And so on. Those would be questions that might have an impact on the greater question of what Miss Johnson is doing in managing behavior in her classroom. But you could also study the classroom directly. That is, how many kids are in the classroom? What is the physical environment like? Is it nice? Is it well painted? Is it well lit? Is the temperature nice? Are there decorations? What sort of impact does that have on misbehavior in the classroom? What are the sources and resources available for instruction? Those are questions that we would ask at the classroom level, so to speak. We could also study the kids. Michael here, we could study him. We could ask questions about his ability. We could ask his questions about his home environment and conditions. We could ask questions like, is he getting enough to eat? Is he getting enough time to sleep? Is he spending a lot of time on a screen? How are those things impacting misbehavior in the classroom? We could also study brains. We could study Michael's brain. We could study his EEG or an fMRI. We could study or explore the question about whether there might be brain trauma or injury. We could ask more general questions like, is this period in Michael's life a time of heightened sensitivity to certain influences, like drugs or toxins, and so on. We could also study neurons. We could study at the level of nerve cell dysfunction. Are his nerves cells, are his neurons firing properly? Are there environmental toxins affecting this cell function? We could ask more generally, what are the effects of environmental enrichment on neural adaptations? This might be a question that informs our answer about misbehavior in Miss Johnson's class. We could go on even further. We could study neurogenetics. Does Michael have a genetically inherited condition that affects his behavior, like Fragile X syndrome, or Prader-Willi syndrome, or Angelman syndrome, or Down syndrome? So that would be a study at the neurogenetic level. So we have many levels of analysis in asking this question, and we can approach it from different levels. We can even go higher than the school. We could look at a community. We could look at a culture. We could look at a society. We could also go below genetics. We could look at and we could look at molecules and so on and so forth. The greater point here, though, is that when we're talking about levels analysis, there's some things to remember. The first is the questions that we ask at different levels may be the same or different depending on the level. And there's no clear, most of the time, no clear delineation between levels. We might move in between levels at times. We just have to be careful that we might recognize that we are at a different level. The answers, though, are likely to be different, meaning that if you ask the same question at different levels, the answers are going to be different. And we should appeal always to phenomena at that level if we're trying to understand misbehavior at a neuronal level. It would be unfortunate, I think, to answer the question with something about the classroom environment, for example, because we have to make links between the levels in order for us to really understand. We could say some causal statements or some correlative statements, but causal statements should be restricted within a particular level. Explanations and descriptions at one particular level do not contradict those at other levels. Now, recognize that this is the case. They are merely different levels of analysis or levels of explanation. Okay, so a description at one level may sound like it's contradicting a description of another level, but if it is a true understanding, they will not contradict one another. They will merely be different. The methods at one level are very likely to be different at other levels. If we want to know the effects of the community on a school or misbehavior, we're not going to use the techniques of an fMRI or an EEG. We're not going to study the genetic level with a survey. We're going to use genetic tools. The other thing to recognize is that one level isn't better than another level. It isn't more descriptive or more explanatory. And if you think that one level explains phenomena at another level, then maybe you are a reductionist. You should think about that in considering your answers at a particular level. So hopefully that gives you an example of different levels of analysis, and maybe you can come up with your own. Maybe you could think about a mental health concern or a substance abuse concern, something relevant to psychology and how we can analyze it at different levels. Hopefully that helped, and hopefully we'll hear from each other soon.